The opinions and statements made by the guests of the Success in Practice podcast are their own, and I do not endorse or accept responsibility for their positions. Any information given by myself or the guests is educational in intention and not to be taken as medical advice. If you choose to act on the content involved in the podcast, you do so at your own risk. Okay, everyone, welcome to another episode of the Success in Practice podcast. Today I'm joined by Alison Simmons. Ali is the owner and operator of Well Adjusted Osteopathy in Australia's capital city of Canberra. She's a British trained osteopath who began her journey into osteopathy after a successful but unsatisfying career in London's finance and banking sector, where the work-life stress, balance was not in the right direction for her. The connection between health, stress and pain couldn't be ignored anymore, and Alison decided that a change in career was on the cards. Alison changed career directions in 1999 and found her purpose as an osteopath. Alison worked in a number of UK osteopathy practices and ran her own clinic before moving to Canberra in 2012, where she established Well Adjusted Osteopathy. With around 2 decades of experience and a Princess Anne Award for professional capability under her belt, she's now running a busy clinic in Canberra whilst raising her 2 daughters. As a practitioner, Ali has a strong interest in helping patients with chronic pain, as well as patients who may have experienced adverse childhood events. Ali, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Very weird to be on it rather than listening to it.
Oh, look, I'm actually quite grateful that I'm getting people who are listening and they're wanting to be on it. So, we're up to, I think we're maybe a quarter or halfway through, where I'd like to be in terms of episodes. But I'm just glad people want to be on it and people want to listen to it. So thank you for listening and thank you for being on it.
Thank you.
Today I want to look at really at you personally as an osteopath. I mean, having a conversation with you a little while ago, you kept telling me that, look, I'm just an ordinary osteopath, I don't know if there's much I could tell people. What I want to learn today is I want to look at how the ordinary is actually necessary. There's a lot of you out there, Ali. I think the silent majority of osteopaths kind of just prod along and work well and do practice osteopathy. And the ordinary is actually necessary. And it really lays down the groundwork for the extraordinary to flourish. We hear a lot of stories, extraordinary stories about osteopaths helping people, and it's from ordinary osteopaths, So I really want to get that point across, and I'm really happy that you're here, and I want to hear about all the ordinary things that you do. But before we get into that, I want to learn a bit about you. Tell me a bit about your backstory. Tell me about your childhood growing up. Your school years, your university years, tell me about the time that you spent in the finance sector and then how you finally got into osteopathy.
Okay. All right. That's a lot to ask. You might have to prompt me. My parents were both doctors. My sister's a nurse. My uncle's a dentist. So I was under a lot of pressure to go to medical school, and I managed to flunk all my exams at 18, which meant that I couldn't go to university. So I went into a state agency for a little while, did a course, and then somehow I found my way into customer service in banking and finance, working on a help desk, dealing with stockbrokers and banking traders and trading floors in London, which was very demanding but a lot of fun. And I was in my 20s and I had a big expense account and I could go out to the latest clubs and bars and restaurants in London on expenses and was having a great time. Paid very well. It was a very demanding job, but paid very well. But they reached a stage where it just wasn't satisfying and I was being drawn back to health. And then maybe in about 1998, I prolapsed the disc in my back, and I had terrible sciatica, which meant that I couldn't sit on the train to get into London, which had an hour and a half commute each way. So I'm not sure whether I was given that pain to stop me from going to my job, because it paid very well. I wasn't very happy, but it paid very well. So you get caught up in that kind of golden handshake. So I had sciatica. I could hardly walk to the doctors. I didn't know what to do, and I was sent to see a physiotherapist. And the physiotherapist didn't really touch me, didn't really examine me, but she got me up on the treatment table doing exercises. And then she booked me back in for the following week. And I went home and I didn't do my exercises. I don't know why I didn't do them, but I didn't do my exercises. So I went back a week later and she said, so how did you go with the exercises? And I said, oh, yeah, fantastic, but I'm still in so much pain. So she said, well, hop up on the couch and show me how you're going with the exercises. And I couldn't remember one single exercise to show her. So I was pretty mortified. Anyway, I left, and somehow I managed to find the local osteopath. And it was life-changing. He was amazing. He helped my pain pretty quickly. He was a lovely guy. And it was sort of just kind of a perfect alignment of timing where I could afford to stop working and to go to uni to become an osteo. I had to do an access course, which I think was maybe about 3 or 4 weeks, just assessing my suitability, because I'd managed to fail all my exams at 18. And I passed that with flying colours, and I think that was maybe June of 1999. And then in the September, I was on the course, studying at the British School of Osteopathy to become an osteo.
Right. And I guess, when was it for you that you really got hooked into osteopathy? Like what part of that journey as a student? So now you're at university, or you're at the BSO.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're at the BSO, which I don't. That's not. Is that a tertiary institution in terms of a university, or is that a private college?
It was a private college when I was there.
Right.
So I had, it was the first year of the Bachelor of Osteopathy, a BOst. Okay. And now they're the British School of now they're the, what are they? University, I don't know what they are now. What are they?
I'm not sure, but
University of Osteopathy or something. But it's the old BSO.
Okay. So you got there, and first class of osteopathy. Tell us about that. Like, what got you? Well, I mean, we know what took you there, but what kept you?
I think even the interview day I loved. It was a massive room set up with different stations where you had to move an elderly patient on the table, walk a pretend blind person to the treatment table and talk them through stuff. Like, I just was like, I love this. Move, those things where you have the metal wand and then you kind of move it up and down and it mustn't beep, doing things like that. I just thought, God, this is fun. And then I did the access course, and it was tough, and I think I enjoyed being challenged. But really, I think pretty early on, our tutors were mostly osteopaths, and they would tell us stories about working in practice and what they'd done. And I think it was just really from day dot hearing stories, and we were doing technique pretty early on as well. So getting hands-on.
And that motivated you?
Yes, I loved it. I loved dealing with people. I was lucky, really, because I was 31 when I started the course. So I had a lot of life experience, and I think that gives you the ability to say, this is tough, but I know it's tougher in the real world. I know it's tougher getting up at and getting on a train at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning every day, 5 days a week. So at least, people would moan, and I think, this is actually good and enjoyable, rewarding. So I think I had some life experience. I love the learning. I love the toughness.
Yeah. Did you have to quit your existing job whilst you were studying, or did you maintain some kind of income?
No, I think it was actually, I think the only people who managed to maintain an income were the people who did the course part-time, which was 3 years part-time, 2 years the last 2 years full-time. Otherwise it was 4 years full-time, and it was very full-time. Like, we were told that class contact time, face-to-face time, was about 25 hours a week. And then on top of that, you would expect about 25 hours of homework. And it was pretty much that. It was very intense. It was a lot of work. So I couldn't have maintained a job. I did have a part-time job in a pub a couple of nights a week, but that's really it.
Let's say you found osteopathy at a younger age. Do you think younger Ali would have been able to handle what was thrown at her with that course, or was it kind of serendipity that you did it when you did it and it worked out well for you?
I think it was serendipity, but I could have handled the course. I think I wasn't mature enough I didn't have the life skills, the ability to deal with people, life experiences. And hats off to my colleagues who were 18, 19, 20, they did fantastic. But I think I needed to do a little bit of growing up and have a little bit of life experience beforehand.
Right. And was there anything, I guess, earlier on in your upbringing or childhood that either prepared you or didn't prepare you for, I guess, I mean, you're in London's finance and banking sector. That's not that's not an easy thing to navigate.
Yeah.
Right. And so, what is it you think that that gave you that particular mindset of making sure that you get through whatever you need to get through and just get shit done? Was that something that you learnt at a young age?
Maybe. I mean, I think I have some perfectionist tendencies, and, maybe when I was growing up, an A wasn't good enough, really. It could have been an A+. So I was pushed quite hard, but I think it's just an innate thing, what do you do otherwise? If I quit, I would have been back in banking and finance. Yes, making lots of money, but all I did was buy more expensive handbags, and because I was miserable. So, you have a bigger pool of money. And in fact, I was earning more then than I earn now. But I would have just been spending more money because I wasn't happy. But I think, the people who did the course, they wanted to do it. It was the only way to do it. There weren't any other options. I know from experience, my daughter's started osteo at Lismore last year, and the number of class contact hours is significantly less. And so I know people, not so much on the new structure of the course, because that makes having another job very difficult. But I know other associates that we've had here who managed to do a massage course and have a job at the same time. It just physically wasn't possible. And I think a course in London often has a commute on top of it, because people commute to get to London. You can't all afford to live in London. So it just wasn't possible. If you wanted to be an osteo, that's what you had to do. So
yeah, right.
We did it.
Right. Okay. All right. And so early on, you were quite well influenced by, I guess, practitioner osteopaths who were teaching and were telling you stories about their experiences in clinic, and that really motivated you. Yeah. Then you, I guess, get through the course, you graduate. How do you decide what you want to do then? Like, what was it? How do you decide what kind of practitioner you want to work with? What was going through your mind? Like, when you remember back to those times, was there a criteria of, say, look, this is what I want to try and achieve in the first couple of years of practice, so I'm going to go work with X, Y, Z? Like, tell us about that.
Well, I'd like to say it was strategic, and I'll just say, when I went to the British School of Osteopathy, when people would say, why did you choose the BSO? And I chose it because it was the nearest school to it made my commute the shortest. because I knew that if I had to add another half an hour, I wouldn't have gone. Whereas other people chose courses because they had a naturopathy element or whatever. So when I qualified, and I have to say, you know, my mum was diagnosed with a brain tumour at the end of my first year, and she died a couple of weeks after I qualified. So really, I was putting one foot in front of the other a little bit. But I think I needed a job, and I needed a job close to home. My first job I secured was in a cranial clinic for a guy, and everyone said, "You're so lucky working with him." And it didn't pan out very well because he didn't have an open door policy. He didn't share information. But really, it was about getting a job and getting a job locally. And it wasn't like Australia. I think, you know, if I have someone apply for a job, I feel like I have to offer it to them because I might not get someone apply for another year. It was more competitive. And if you want, you could go and qualify and put a sign on your door, but I wanted to work with somebody. I knew I still had quite a lot to learn. So it was really a question of sending out applications like you would for a job, an ordinary job, and seeing who came back and seeing, you know, and then having an interview. So I had a couple of jobs that didn't really work out. And then I think the third job I landed was perfect. So it was a bit of trial and error, but it, you know, you couldn't just pick and choose. I knew I needed to be busy, and I knew I wanted someone to support me. But that's really it.
Right. So what were those early years like in terms of a practitioner? I mean, your clinical practice, tell us about that. Was it mainly direct work that you were doing? I mean, were you just trying to apply what you had learned? You know, tell us, what was your mindset and what were you doing day to day?
Well, the BSO is quite structural uni. So we learned cranial, but I knew that I wanted to come out. I think I wanted to come out and use all the skills. I didn't want to come out having spent all that time learning techniques to drop them in favour of one or the other. And then I wanted to come out, I suppose I wanted to come out and work with a variety of patients. I wanted to work hands-on. I wanted to, really, people are really important. So to connect with people, to help people. But my aspirations really were to make a difference, really. I guess to be able to help people in the way that I was helped, to be able to inspire people to move forward, to help people get out of pain.
Okay, and I guess did you work at one clinic? Did you work at two clinics? What was that life like day to day? You know, were you what kind of volume of patients were you seeing? You know, how did you hit the ground running as a new graduate? What was that? What were those days like?
My first couple of jobs were I wasn't that busy, and the first clinic, they didn't have an open door policy. So when I wasn't seeing patients, I was twiddling my thumbs. But the next clinic that I worked at, so initially I was transitioning, so I was doing a half a day at the one clinic, and then during my lunch break I was driving to the next clinic, and then I was seeing patients. So the second clinic, where I stayed for nearly 8 years, I was pretty busy there. The osteopath who was running the clinic had a big overflow, and people would come and see me, and then they would carry on seeing me. So I was probably seeing, maybe fairly early on, 4 or 5 patients a day, and then building up to 8 to 10 a day fairly quickly, because he was very busy. But when I wasn't seeing patients, I was in his room working alongside him. Sometimes we do 2-man cranial techniques. He would be questioning me. I'd just be observing and seeing what he was doing. And I learned so much in those early couple of years. And I know I've had associates here, relatively new grads at this clinic. And when they haven't had patients, they've been in their room doing paperwork or emails or whatever. You know, great osteopaths, great at what they did. Maybe I wasn't their bag of a type of osteo that they wanted to work with. But, you know, every minute that I wasn't treating patients, I was in doing observations, and I learned so much. And then if I had a patient and I couldn't do an adjustment or I had a question, I could go into the practitioner's room and ask him a question, or he would come in and help me out. So I think I was very blessed to have found that, because that was really important for my learning and my confidence. He was a very zoomed out osteopath, which I think is really important. So looking at the body as a whole and considering lifestyle issues and, you know, really the mind body stuff. So that's really what I experienced. So I think I was competent when I qualified, but I didn't have much self-confidence, and I think being full of anxiety makes you, you know, takes your brain offline. So I didn't always work particularly well. I was lucky because I was older, so people assumed I'd been qualified longer, so I had that for sure in my favour. I think working with someone was invaluable. So, and I was prepared. I guess when I was older, you know, if I made mistakes or I had questions, I would ask. So I had a patient in the early days when we did paper notes, and she was lovely, and she came in and I think she came in with right knee pain or something. So I spent half an hour examining her knee and treating her knee, and then I went to write the notes, and she'd left, and I went to write the notes up, and I realised I visualised her on the treatment table, and I treated the other knee for the whole half an hour. And anyway, she was lovely, but I was prepared to put my hands up, and I called her and said, "I'm so sorry, I didn't realise. Why didn't you say anything?" And she said, "Oh, well, you know, I know these osteopaths, they're holistic, so I thought that you'd be treating my right knee through my left knee or whatever." But I think in practice, you have to be prepared to make some mistakes and put your hands up and be honest. And, you know, and I think often your patients know more about their stuff maybe than you always know. So ask questions and be open to receiving information from your patients. But I think being prepared to ask, and also just having that supportive network. I personally couldn't have gone out and set up on my own then. But I know lots of people do, and people were more confident, and but I needed that support.
Yeah, I think that you're not the only, you're probably not the first and last osteopath to work on the wrong knee or the wrong foot, you know. That's, but you know, lucky you're not a surgeon, right?
Yes,
That's
I
still
know.
got their foot attached. Yeah.
No, yeah.
Right. Okay. So then, did you open your own practice in the UK? Did you get to that point where you opened your own practice in the UK? And how long did that last for before you decided to go to a sunnier country?
To leave. I had my kids. So I had my first child within a year of qualifying, and I went back to work. My husband was made redundant, so I had to go back to work when she was 5 weeks old. And so I worked through, and then when the kids were a little bit older, I just wanted I probably set up my own clinic because I wanted to be around a little bit more. So that, and it was just a room from a detached garage. So I could, you know, see some patients and be home and be able to read bedtime stories and stuff. So I probably did that for maybe 5 years. So I was still working in the clinic that I was in originally, and then just seeing a few patients from home.
That the great thing about osteopathy is that you never become redundant.
No, and I think that is nice, having been made redundant or having had a partner made redundant. Yeah, it's nice that you can work the hours that you need to work around your family. And I think
it's amazing.
And I think, you know, being a woman, that's still, you know, I know things have changed, but I still think the lion's share of childcare falls on the woman. And my husband, you know, at times he went back into London, so he would have been leaving at 6 a.m. and coming back at 7 p.m. If a child was sick, you know, it was down to me to be able to accommodate it and work around it and work the evenings. So having your own clinic at least allows you to say, look, I'm sorry, my kids are sick, but I can see you at 7 and work in the evening. So it allowed the flexibility. I don't think I necessarily aspired to work completely on my own then, but it worked well around the family. And then we were struggling financially. My husband had retrained as an electrician, but he wasn't overly passionate about it, and we were struggling. And I think the global financial crisis was pretty big in the UK, and we had a nice house and a big mortgage, and we were buying food on credit cards, and we were getting a new credit card to pay off the old credit card. And it was cold and wet and dreary one January, and we watched a TV show about moving down to Australia. And at the end of the show, they had they scrolled through occupations that were looking for, that Australia was looking for, and osteopathy came up. So really, within a week, I'd started the process of organising to come across to Australia. It wasn't straightforward.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Tell us about that process of you trying. And what year was that? That was in 2012, 11?
We started the process in 2010 and probably got here in 2012.
So tell me about that process of somebody from the UK trying to come and work in Australia. What's that like?
Well, I think really my information is a bit historic. I think it's changed. So when I did it, you had to apply through ANZOC, which is Australia and New Zealand Osteopathic Council or something. Mm-hmm. So, and it was a crazy process because I had to put in paperwork and then fly over to Bundoora, Melbourne. I don't know which uni that is, but I had to fly to Bundoora, to do a 3-hour written exam, which, would have been nice if I could have done it somewhere in England, but I had to fly over for the exam. Then I flew back. Then I had to do 12 weeks of reflective practice, journaling and answering questions and stuff. And then I had to fly back over for we call it an OSCE or a practical exam, a day of seeing patients and being examined. Then wait for the results, and then I think that's it. And then given the green light to come over. So it was probably all in all, took maybe, 4 months, 5 months, something like that to do the flying over and the paperwork and stuff. So you had to do that, but that meant that you could come over and just, you could work wherever. So there wasn't any mentoring or anything. So
you came on a working visa?
I came on a state-sponsored visa.
Okay.
So the only option available to me because of my age was to get enough points together for a visa was to be state-sponsored, which is how I ended up in Canberra. So
did you have to find a clinic to work at before you left the UK, or did you come and settle in and then go, all right, let's have a look at what's going on and see if we can find something?
No, because I was moving a whole family over, I really needed to know that I had a job to come to. I didn't at the time know that I could have walked into any job in Canberra. I didn't know what the job situation was like, but I applied for a job, and I flew over, say maybe, I started the application maybe in January, or the process of moving across January 2010. I think towards the end of 2010, maybe December, I flew over for an interview in Canberra. And then I was offered the job on a percentage basis as an associate.
So you're a contractor? Yeah.
So I knew the clinic was busy, and I knew how much each patient paid for their appointments. Right. And then I could calculate roughly how much I would earn. And so we decided we could do it. We could come across. My husband wouldn't have a job, but he could find something. We would come over. Yeah. Initially, we were going to Adelaide, but quite far through the process, we'd sorted out schools and stuff for the kids. Adelaide closed the window for state sponsorship for osteos. So I had an interview with Andrea. I think you had her on the other day. Andrea,
right, yes. Robertson, yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to come over, but at the last minute that was closed down. So the only place that was sponsoring was ACT. So we had to change plans. But then by the time I arrived, which was maybe 9 months later, after having that original interview, because you have to go through medicals and stuff, and rent the house and move across. Stupid me, and a lesson for everybody. I didn't have that job offer in writing, and I didn't have the terms and conditions in writing. So then when I rocked up, fairly experienced, having 8 years under my belt, I was offered an employed job at about $40 an hour or something,
right,
to support my whole family and rent and stuff. And we couldn't do it. I mean, I came, but we couldn't survive. So 12 weeks in. So that was tough, because we were here in another country, not really knowing how osteopathy runs in Australia, and I had 12 weeks to jump ship, because otherwise then the contract was going to roll and I was going to be held to it. So I jumped ship to another clinic for similar money, really. And
they were all employee positions?
They were. They were.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I suppose I didn't know enough about the system to just start working on my own. So, but I feel quite strongly that it's a tough thing to move your whole family to the other side of the world. And you imagine that everybody speaks English, so it's going to be same. And culturally it's quite different, and osteopathy-wise it's fairly different. And I think I wasn't met with a lot of kindness. And so really the way I work now, and I'd like to think that that's, my associates experience it, is that I want to be kind and supportive. Life is tough. Be kind, look after people, look out for people, look out for your staff. So, yeah, my first 2 experiences were very tough. And
so tell me about that, though. You said you weren't met with a lot of kindness. Was it in terms of like just having empathy for your situation, and then trying to maybe accommodate for you, or what? When you say, you weren't met with kindness, can you give us an example of, was it a financial issue? Was it just an issue to do with your position, or not understanding your situation in total? Can you flesh that out with us for a little bit?
Okay. Well, financially, first and foremost, I couldn't afford to pay the rent or the childcare. But I think I was, I was relatively experienced. I'd worked on my own. If I was overrunning a few minutes, the receptionist was told that she'd have to knock on my door and find out what was going on. And if I had, I understand that there are walk-ins. But, arriving in a new country, I had to get paperwork and register with Centrelink and do other stuff. So if I had a gap just before my lunch break and I didn't have a patient, then I'd want to go out to Centrelink or whatever. And I was told that I wasn't allowed to. So I think, a bit of inflexibility. I felt like probably I was being treated like a new grad. And maybe because I was employed, and I understand that now from an employed position, but it wasn't really the position that I was coming for, but I was stuck with it. So
these are the trappings of an employee position, right? Like these are the trappings of an employee position that the person who's employing you is basically paying for your time.
Yeah, they own you.
They own you for that time that you're on. Yes. Now, I mean, you don't want to, you don't want to be that kind of business, because, we want people, if they have things to do and kids to go and see and errands to run, we want them. You're working with adults. You're not working with children. They see these practice managers. They'll knock on your door and if you don't run on time, if you don't do that, I'm like, just you calm down. You're working with adults here. You're working with people who have lives. You need to have some empathy. And what happens is when you treat people in that fashion, if you, as a business owner, go through a tough time or you need them to come through for you for anything, they'll do it. They'll do it off their own back. You won't need to tell them. But if you treat people in that fashion like they're replaceable, then they'll just one day they'll just go, screw you, mate. I'm not doing anything extra for you. So, I'm sorry that you had that experience, but I guess that is the trappings of an employee position. But I think we're hopefully starting to get out of that and learning that, to be a good employer, you have to treat people like adults, not like little children.
Yeah, and like I understand, that if you're employing someone, you're paying out a lot of money, you're paying for holiday and whatever. And I suppose the difficulty was I was arriving in a new country. I had a lot of things to sort out. I was in a position that I wasn't expecting to. I'd been self-employed for 8 years already. So, it was tough. But I do really agree that, if someone said, yeah, block it out, it's fine. There are enough practitioners here if someone's a walk-in, or they can hold off for an hour. Block it out, go to Centrelink, go do whatever you need to do. And then, the next day, if I needed to see someone through lunch, I could have seen them through lunch. So there wasn't really that. And then
it's not like you were going out, it's not like you were going out sipping coffee with your mates,
No, and really,
No.
you have to acclimatise as well. All of a sudden you're in the other side of the world. Go and walk around the block. Don't just sit in the room. So I try, although my associates they're well experienced, they, I'd like to think that I come from a place of kindness, and if someone needs something, they can have it because I know that they have my back at other times. So, and so the next job I had was fairly unpleasant, and so I started there. And so I was being paid maybe $42 an hour or something, but immediately the owners went away, and so I was seeing 12 to 14 patients a day for fairly pittance. I was getting burnt out, and I think it was just I was used to coming from a very professional clinic setup. So coming from a customer service background, I'm really all over customer service. Like I really believe in the patient experience. And so the second clinic I was working in, the receptionist would eat like Mexican and hot chips at the front desk, and they'd be chatting to each other, and a patient would walk in and they would ignore them and stuff. And I would raise it because it impacts on me, and be shut down. So it probably for me, an employed position was not ideal, but it wasn't. It wasn't an option for me, and I needed to pay the rent. So I think I was there maybe 6 months, and then I had to set up on my own. And maybe that was a good thing.
Yeah. You didn't really have any good experiences working alongside people here before you opened up, right?
No,
well,
I found that I feel that, and it could be different, but I feel like in the UK, osteopaths are maybe less business oriented, and probably we need a bit more business training, and much more out to support and look after the next osteopath. So I would always be prepared to mentor someone. There was always the saying that you never charge another osteopath to treat them. You want to support them and look after them. And when I came here, I suppose it was with that impression, and then I found that osteopathy really felt more like a business, and it was really a smack in the face, a bit of a reality check. And so I feel like, because it's more business, like people hold stuff close to them. They don't want to share. They don't want to be open and stuff. So it wasn't my kind of osteopathy. It wasn't my kind of clinic. And so I had to set up on my own.
Hello everyone. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank everyone for watching and listening to the podcast. If you have received value from this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the channel on whichever platform that you are listening on. If any of the conversations have resonated with you and you feel that I can help elevate your practice, you can find me at successinpractice.net. That is, the Success in Practice program can be found at successinpractice.net. The Success in Practice program is the signature program that takes a practitioner who may be struggling with retaining patients. They may not be certain about building effective treatment strategies, and they may feel somewhat anxious and doubtful about what they are going to do with a patient. And they are not really accelerating in the real world of private practice. It takes this practitioner and it turns their careers right around to the point where the patients have an effective diagnosis and a real treatment plan that they can take home. Patients are happy to book in multiple sessions with you, and they are confident about your abilities. And more importantly, you now have direction and are confident about your own abilities. The program streamlines how you operate as a practitioner. Guys, you should have been taught this at university, but you weren't. You may have been practicing for the last few years thinking there has to be a better way. There has to be a more effective way of engaging with patients and getting them results. Well, there is. And this is what the program delivers. Go to successinpractice.net and check out the options available to you. See where I can help you easily grow your patient list and finally earn the rewarding income that you deserve. For all the information on how you can reach me personally, check out the show notes. Also in the show notes, you'll find a link to the chat transcripts from these podcasts. These are valuable and a wealth of information. I really hope that you're enjoying the podcast. Guys, leave a comment if there's any questions on this episode. And please, don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the channel. Now, back to the show.
You're right in what you're saying in terms of, like, you know, if you ever meet another osteopath, no matter where in the world, you'd always just treat them, right? Like, you know, it's not like I've had a few osteopaths come through my clinic. I never charge them, not for any reason other than the fact that I'm just imagining myself back at university and just laying there on the plinth, and you're all kind of just doing stuff and learning together, and that's how I feel like when another osteopath walks in. I just feel like we're colleagues and we kind of look after each other.
Yeah,
you know?
if you're in a fix, you would support them.
Yeah, because it's good to think that if I was ever in a bind, someone else would help me out too, you know? And so, I really think that should be something that it's almost like an unwritten rule, you know, where osteopaths should be looking after each other, no matter where you are in the world. Like, I've travelled overseas and gone to see osteopaths, and they've been very accommodating, you know? And so sometimes you call them and they're very booked, and they're like, you'll have a chat and say, look, I'm an osteopath too. Oh, yeah, no problem. Oh, really? Okay, well, yeah, come through, you know, just lay you down. Just come in and wait, and I'll squeeze you in and just lay you down, and we'll see what's going on. Like, you know, it doesn't have to be anything formal.
No.
But, yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think there should be a little bit more community-based empathy, I guess.
Yeah. I think more empathy and more kindness. And look, I understand sometimes I feel like if I need 4 treatments or something, that I would rather pay because I want to have the 4 treatments that I need. I don't want to feel like, you know, I don't want to bother you again during your lunch break or whatever. So I'm happy to do that. But I think for a one-off, or if someone's in a fix, be supportive and kindness. And you know, maybe it's just, you know, my own experiences, but it was a shock, to be honest, to find.
Well, it comes back to your own. It comes back to your own, I guess, standards that you hold for yourself as well. Like, you know, we all treat family and friends, right? And we all, I mean, maybe not all of us, but I know for me, I can speak for myself. My direct family, I don't charge them. If they have a health fund, they kind of run the health fund through, and thank you very much. But they don't get any less of a service.
No.
Like, they don't get any less of a. And if I look at them and I'm like, and they got a problem, and I say, look, you need about 5 sessions to get this right. I'm seeing them for 5 sessions. It's not like, well, you know, you don't really pay full fee, so just come in when you need it. No, if I think they need 5 sessions, because I hold myself to a standard. It's not about, you know, it's not about money or anything like that. Like, it should be about a certain standard that you won't accept for your patients. And your friends are your patients, and your family are your patients. And, you know, if someone needs 4 sessions, they need 4 sessions, you get them come back in, and you always get paid on the back. I don't understand this. You know, you do good work on people, and they'll go and tell the person that's doing the plumbing at their place that they just got out of a bind because their cousin or their best mate helped them get out of it, and they'll just send people to you. I've never lost financially on helping out other people. It's just, if I do the maths on it, it's always positive. And so, you know, I really think we should have that mindset. I saw a couple of threads on some of the Facebook kind of, you know, groups that we're probably all a part of, you know, and one of them was like, oh, you know, I've got a couple of osteopaths working, and they want to treat each other, and it's on our time, and, you know, should we be asking that they charge? Oh, you know, and I'm like, I'm just scratching my head. I'm like, do you have people in your clinic that you care about, or are you treating them like is this 1950s industrial kind of like, factory line that you got going on here? What's going on? Like, of course you let them treat each other. Do you want them to be injured? Do you want a work cover claim? I'm not sure what's going on here. So I thought that was a no-brainer, and I'm like, are people actually discussing this? But that's just my own opinion on it. And we're going to get to the ordinary and all that kind of stuff. And I think, like I said earlier, there's a silent majority of us out there that just scratch their heads going, do people really ask these questions? Like, it's just in my clinic, if you saw, you treat the practitioner that's unwell,
Yeah.
because you're a team, you're a family, you're colleagues. But anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. I want to ask you, Ali, about... So you finished up working for other people and kind of thought, you know what, I can't do this. I'm opening up on my own. Yeah. And so you opened up on your own in Canberra. Mm-hmm. And has that been a better experience for you in terms of getting the clinic busy and then growing it?
Yes, I suppose so. I mean, I was lucky, and I don't know whether I don't think this is countrywide, but there's something called Comcare in Australia, which is, I don't know, but it's like a public servant fund if people are injured. So initially, I think I might have gone under if it wasn't for Comcare. But Comcare, right. I had regular patients that were coming through, so I managed to sustain myself. And then over time, I got busier, and then I needed to have associates. Really, not necessarily for an income thing, but just to get the wait list down, or to be able to have a holiday and not have to work till midnight every day the week before, and then, when you come back. But getting osteopaths to Canberra is difficult, and really now I've stopped and given up. Because, and I think, I'm not sure if it was Peter Lamb that said that you have so few applications that you feel like you have to offer the job, and it's not a good match, and then it ends in tears. And so I've had some end in tears, and it's not a reflection on the practitioners, but we're just, poles apart. They're not interested in structural osteopathy. They don't see the value of HVT. They would never crack a neck. And that's fine. Oh, they want to prescribe exercises all the time, but it just means that and their patients love them, but their patients
your values
don't
match,
and my patients don't like them, and so it actually then becomes hard work and not a pleasure. And so not getting the applications through, probably not having enough osteopaths coming through uni as it is, but definitely not having enough that want to come to Canberra. And if an osteopath comes to Canberra, they have a pick of all the clinics that can pay salaries, which I can't. So you offer a job to someone and it's not a good match. So, but it's a hard thing to say, do you know what, I'm going to say no, and I might not get another application for 2 years, but I'm going to say no anyway. So it's tough. And so I think for me, mentally, it's easier to just go, that's it. We'll just operate as we are.
Right. How do you think you could be supported better in that way? Like, what if you could wave a magic wand and make a change? I guess what would that be?
Well, obviously, we need more osteopaths, and we need more osteopaths that would be prepared to come to Canberra. And maybe you'd come to Canberra if you were. Well, you probably wouldn't, but if you were from Sydney, but you could at least be busy if you came to Canberra. But I feel that my kind of...
Canberra has universities, right? Like, Canberra has universities.
It does have universities, but I have an opinion on the courses that are being run. But I also feel like you talk about the kind of silent majority, and I feel like us little osteos working in little clinics around the country, doing soft tissue, doing dry needling, doing HVT, taking a holistic perspective. I don't know whether it's because that's not being taught in uni, and so people are coming out and they don't value it. But I think you start to feel like you should just keep quiet. and nobody does HVT, and HVTs, you shouldn't be doing necks, and you shouldn't be doing this, and I should be spending half my time prescribing exercises. I don't agree with that, but because I think we're in the minority quietly working away, you start to feel like you have no value and your opinions have no value, and the unis don't employ people part-time who work in clinics who have experience. So I think you just get quiet and hide away and feel like, I don't know. I just think that the osteos are not being produced in the way that have that produce people who want to work for someone like me.
Well, look, you're not in the minority. I mean, you're in the silent majority where osteopaths are using direct techniques. They're doing good myofascial work. They're utilizing HVT and MET and a lot of the techniques that were kind of championed maybe back in the 80s and 90s when you went through. A lot of osteopaths are working in that fashion. They're working quietly. They're doing great work. They're helping people out. They might not be as loud online. And what you'll tend to find is that the people who are really loud online in terms of talking, I guess, against that particular brand of osteopathy are usually people that can't do it. I don't practice cranial. I don't practice it, but I don't come out and just shit on it because I don't practice it. And good luck to you if you want to practice it, but I'm not going to come out and talk badly about it because I don't do it. And so you'll tend to find that people that go, no, I'm not doing. I would never adjust an occiput. I would never adjust a C1. It's usually people that don't know how to, or they've never done it, or they've done it and gotten bad results and decide not to do it again. And so, and then what they do is they blame osteopathy instead of looking at themselves as a practitioner. And so, so don't let that kind of get you down in terms of being vocal about it. But I think there's a real need for there's a real need for someone like yourself and other people who are in a similar vein to be a little bit more vocal when, people ask questions online about, what do I do in this situation? It seems quite simple. What do I do if someone's got a thoracic outlet syndrome? You go, well, you just got to move the thoracics. You got to move the ribs. You got to do some good HVT to the upper thoracics if the patient can handle it well. And don't be scared of, releasing the scalenes and looking at the cervicals and adjusting the cervicals. And if people kind of want to push back against that, hey, you should be ready to kind of hold your ground and speak up for the way that you treat, because you're not treating in a way that doesn't produce results. You've got results behind you.
Yes, well, you wouldn't be able to build a practice if you didn't. But I also feel like, you can diss a technique, but really for me, osteopathy is a way of thinking. And I think you've mentioned before about not teaching principles. And I had an amazing 5th year student come into the clinic just to do some obs. Really personable. He's going to do really well. But he'd not heard of any osteopathic principles, and he was in the 5th year. So I say to new patients, look, if you looked at me treating, you would say, oh, she's doing dry needling, or she's doing soft tissue, oh, she's cracking like a chiro, she's like I do a bit of sound therapy, or a whole load of a bit of cranial. But that's not, they're just tools. I'm thinking, look at the posture, look at the alignment. Is there a leg length difference? Is the thoracics moving properly? Are the ribs moving? Is the thoracic duct draining from the head and neck? Is it, what's going on in their lives? Has their husband just divorced them and they've got 2 kids and they're living on their own and they can't pay the rent? There's a whole load of stuff that really is, the pain detective. I'm not saying your glutes are not firing or your glutes are overworking. That's a cop-out. I say, but why are they not doing it? Why now? Why today? So yes, they're techniques that I use, and yes, you could say I'm a structural osteopath, but I feel like people need to be taught the principles so that they can apply those principles and say, okay, I'm looking at the function of the body, structure, function, or whatever. I'm looking at that. How's it moving? What's going on with their body today? What's the drainage like? What's the circulation like? Are their feet overpronated or whatever? How can we support this person today? Saying prescribe exercises and stuff. Some of my patients don't have the mental resources. The fact that they got up and they came for their appointment is a big woo, brilliant.
Yeah.
They don't, they're not always equipped. If they've experienced trauma or they're having a tough time in their life, they're coming in, they need touch, they need their sympathetic system calmed down, they need their pain relieved so it's one less stress in their life. They don't need to be told off for not doing their exercises. We all know, don't drink too much, don't smoke, do your exercises, you'll have a better outcome. We discuss that. But at the end of the day, sometimes the fact that my patients turn up is a big thing. So yes, I do have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about it, but and always coming from a position of kindness and a position of meeting the patient. So I had a practitioner once who said, I said, did you rebook the patient? Are they coming back? Not in a, what are your stats? Did you rebook them? But out of interest. And they said, no, but to be honest, I don't care if they come back because I didn't like them. And I feel like it's my job to connect with everybody. Like when you talk to patients, everybody has something endearing about them. And if I fail to communicate, then that's on me. That's my issue for not being able to communicate. Like I did an amazing course, and I think it wouldn't take away from your course, but I think it's called the Patient-Centered Practitioner. And they teach all about communication styles. And if I'd learned it when I first qualified, it would really help me. So I think learning to communicate with patients is really important as well. So the kindness and the communication and meeting people where they're at when they walk into your treatment room.
Definitely, that's the communication it's a major part of the course that I teach. There's a whole module on communication, and so it's really important that I guess that especially where patient-centered, yes, but also I've mentioned this before, practitioner-driven. And that comes back to the responsibility that you talked about, when you mentioned that example of someone not liking a patient, that's not practitioner-driven. Like, you're driving the treatment and the treatment is supposed to be patient-centered. And so your communication is patient-centered, but it's got to come from you. You're the person that they're paying to help them out of this mess that they're in. And so, your communication style is as much part of your treatment as your actual treatment. And I guess you it's part of the development process of a competent practitioner. I want to ask you. You use a lot of psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, and you deal with trauma and childhood trauma. Tell me how you've incorporated that into your practice. Tell me how, like the nuts and bolts of it. How do you actually go about incorporating that into your actual consultation?
It's not always so easy because sometimes those consults would be longer, and I have to say I don't do as much as I've maybe done in the past, but I've done, and I think it's probably a good thing for people to do, that at least 1 in 4 people that you will see will have experienced some kind of significant trauma in their life. And so you can do a training course, trauma-informed care, which just helps you navigate talking to people and addressing how you deal with them. So I think I've done lots of trauma-informed care, but I think the way I work is I try to use language that doesn't allow patients to catastrophize or helps them feel more comfortable in what they're going through and that it's maybe not the end of the world. I don't use, there are scoring systems like adverse childhood events scoring. There's another scoring one, I can't think what it's called, a resilience score. So I tend to not to use those. But I think what I'll do is, and maybe it's easier for me, I've experienced trauma myself, so maybe it's easier to connect. But I think when you have a good communication style, people open up, and it probably allows me to help them in a more constructive way, just in my language and stuff. But I do use, I've just done a course recently called on havening, which is about removing trauma. So I say, so it doesn't have to be significant childhood trauma. I have a patient who, by accident, pulled out of a junction, and a motorbike was coming round the corner, and the guy was on drugs, and he hit her car and she killed him, or he killed himself, or whatever. And so since then she had a lot of surgery and stuff. She's fine, but she's had a lot of neck pain that really is not consistent with what's going on in her neck if you looked at it with imaging. But there's lots of research that trauma can get locked into the body, if you experience a significant trauma like that. So you can use havening to remove the somatosensory aspect of that. Like if she thought about her neck pain, and then, or she had a long journey, and her neck pain would be worse, and then she'd be feeling sweaty because she's imagining the guy's bike hitting the car. So you can use havening. So occasionally I'll use some havening. There's another protocol called Old Pain to Go, which you can look up and Google, and I've used that with patients. So I think I'm not, some patients, they're not really heart sync patients, but we often see last chance saloon, people come in, and so I'm not arrogant enough to say, look, I've been treating for 20 years, so my technique's going to be way better than the next person. But sometimes you just know that there's something more that's needed doing. So I saw a patient, she'd had migraines for 23 years, and she thought it was to do with paint fumes for a weekend that she spent painting. So she thought that had triggered the migraines, and they'd been with her ever since. And so I was able to use this Old Pain to Go technique, which is a talk therapy and then a practical element to it, to discuss that. Sometimes maybe it sounds a bit nutty to some people, but at that time in her life, when we went back and discussed it and said, what else was going on in your life at that time when they started? And she was like, nothing. And we carried on talking. And then she said, my husband was always like on the go, wanted to do stuff all weekend, and she worked hard all week, and she had the kids, and she just wanted downtime at the weekend. And so she said she worked out herself that the migraines were a way of her taking to her bed and having some downtime so that she didn't have to do stuff. So we talked her through and did the Old Pain to Go technique, and she hasn't had a migraine since, having had them consistently for 23 years. So sometimes, and you'll experience with patients, sometimes you just have a gut feeling that something else is going on, and that gut feeling might be that there's a trauma. You can normally pick it up in someone's mannerisms. So I don't always use technique. Sometimes it's just about kindness and empathy and just the way that you address patients and you talk to them. So I can't say a big part of my day is used up doing it, but I might throw in a technique, or it might be the way that I inquire about things that get people thinking.
I think for newer practitioners who might be listening to this, Ali's been working for a little while, and you get this kind of gut instinct. You build up this kind of radar where you can pick up on things. Now, if you're a recent graduate, or someone who's maybe around the 5-year mark, less than 5 years, at the very least, at the very least, you would have built up some palpatory skill, hopefully. And a lot of the times your palpatory skill will kind of let off your gut feeling, because you'll know what good tissue feels like, and then you'll know what dysfunctional tissue feels like, and you'll know what, say, if something's mechanical in nature, and we get this gut feeling that, hey, this isn't really mechanical, there's something else going on there. And as a new practitioner, you don't need to do more than that. All you need to do, if you know that, then find someone that can help them, and then you've done such a great service to that patient, right? But when your gut feeling goes off because you're kind of palpating their neck and you go, you know what, this doesn't feel right. There's something's going on here, but it's not something I can adjust, or it's not something I can myofascially release, or a counter strain, or something. If you get that kind of sensory feedback, I think have a chat about it to somebody who you might be working with who's got more years, or pick up the phone and call somebody who you know. And I'm happy to take a phone call off somebody. You'd be too, Ali.
Yeah, absolutely.
And have a chat. And if you need to just refer them off, then refer them off. And you'll get great results with that. Like, trust your gut instinct; it'll actually serve you really well. I want to, I guess, ask you, and you answered the question in terms of what you're doing. And I guess what I want to say is that a lot of what you do with the hypnotherapy and the psychotherapy is more speech based. You discuss things with people, and then you incorporate that with a lot of the nervous system release, sympathetic, parasympathetic. You incorporate that into practice, and then you do your mechanical stuff, and you tap into the somatic kind of reflex there, which is fantastic. I guess the next thing I want to ask you is that you mentioned earlier to me that your daughter was began doing osteopathy. And that tell us about that, and what was that experience like, and what's happened there, and what was your take on it?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I was super proud that she wanted to be an osteopath, and I love osteopathy. I can't, one day I might want to see less patients, but I'm never off the job. I'm always looking at people's posture and alignment. So I treated her since she was a baby. So I was thrilled when she said she wanted to go. Financially, we couldn't afford to send her to Melbourne, so she got a place at Lismore, and she started at Lismore. However, the course is they just changed. I think this year is the first year that they started to do this 6 weeks of teaching, 2 weeks off.
Right.
6 weeks
so
of teaching.
Just give me. Sorry, Ali. Give me context around this. What year was this?
Okay. So she started last year, so February 2023.
Right.
February 2023. So she started then. So she went up to Lismore. Uni accommodation is pretty cheap. So she went up there, and the class, and really for us, the choice had to be financial. It wasn't who does the best course or whatever. Anyway, so they had this 6 week block, 2 weeks off, which I did say to the uni, it was actually very difficult to support yourself with a job, because they had so little class contact time. And I think I said British School of Osteopathy 25 hours a week of class contact time. I think she maybe had 6, depending on how many modules, 6 hours or something. And she really needed to support herself, but she couldn't get a job where she had 6 weeks and then 2 weeks off, and 6 weeks and 2 weeks off. She couldn't. It was very difficult to get a job to support her through that. Yeah. So she managed to get a pet sitting job, but it was really not enough money. But I think the trouble with the course is, and maybe I was very lucky at the BSO, because it was all osteopathy. So you studied an anatomy of a certain part of the body, you did technique on it, you did some cranial, you did some function stuff, so it was all tied in. Everything that you did was tied in. It all made sense. Whereas they're doing osteopathy alongside the pharmacists and the nurses and whatever. So they learn.
They're all learning the same anatomy. They're all learning the same anatomy.
At the same time. And so they sprinkle in a little bit of osteopathic technique in there. However, they haven't learnt the anatomy, and they're doing the osteopathic technique. So there was only 11 people that started the course at Lismore. And you talk about numbers needing to go through, like 11's not a lot and not very financially viable. So I think somewhere through semester 1, they were all very worried, because they were having they were being assessed on assessing joints. And so there could be, say,
Right.
6 joints, and they were going to be assessed on 3 of them, but they didn't know which 3, which is kind of standard stuff. And so I was saying, well, all you need to know is, you know, these joints and these joints are hinge joints, and you apply roughly the same movements, flexion, extension, or whatever. This is a ball and socket joint. You know, this one might be slightly modified, but basically, you know, you're going to be all right. And she said, oh, what? I don't know what you're talking about. She said, I don't know about hinge joints. I don't know about ball and socket joints, you know. So doing it alongside everybody else makes it hard and makes people frustrated and doubt themselves with their abilities. So how can you assess a joint when you haven't learnt the anatomy of the joint beforehand? Like otherwise you're learning by rote, which is makes things very difficult. And I think that reflects in the, you know, at the end of semester 1, I think there were only 5 people left, and she left.
Right, so she didn't continue on with the course.
No, and
No.
there was no point in her going to
I mean,
Gold Coast. There's no point in going to Gold Coast because it's the same. And
Well, I think they're only offering it now at the Gold Coast. I'm not sure they're offering it anymore at Lismore. So, right. So look, okay. So you being an osteopath, obviously you've got some insight into what you think an osteopath should at least know. I mean, you've discussed that briefly in the last few minutes.
Yeah.
What was your course of action? Did you get on the phone and say, hey, look, you know, there must be a fellow osteopath running the place down there.
Yeah.
Can I talk to somebody? Did that happen? Did you pick up the phone?
Yeah,
and have a chat?
I did call the head of the course, Paul isn't the head of the course. Paul was teaching.
Right.
And I explained the issues, and I said that she was having issues learning, and I couldn't understand why she wasn't learning the anatomy before she was doing the practical exams, and that they were all getting upset. And you know, the 6-week term and the 2 weeks off, and you know, it was very difficult to support yourself. And they were actually quite unpleasant and came out on the attack. So I was quite shocked that osteopath to osteopath, they wouldn't say, you know, I understand. You know, it was like totally the party line, instead of saying, I understand, you know, we're having teething issues. Maybe it's not right. You know, we're interested in feedback. Maybe we can tweak it. But it was very much on the attack, and this is the way it is, and no one else has got a problem. And the other students said that they were always made to feel like they were the only one if they raised an issue, and that they were making a fuss. So I think there maybe was a culture of just shut it all down. And I think at the end of semester 1, they apologised and said, you know, we're sorry, we probably haven't delivered very well. But the students are like, well, we've paid for a whole semester of learning, and we haven't really learned anything.
Yeah. So why do you think that is? Why do you think that is, Ali? I mean, why do you think that's happening? I mean, like, you know, why do you think this trend is happening in education, in osteopathic education?
I really don't understand, because I love osteopathy, and I think that, you know, with the right people running the course and inspiring and telling stories, I think the course should be overrun. I mean, I think we do great stuff, and I think that, you know, we see patients who have seen everybody else and they come to us and we manage to help them. But I think, you know, if you're not employing experienced osteopaths in teaching, which I understand is the case, then who is there to tell these stories and to inspire and to say, oh, I saw this patient and we did this and this, and it, you know, I'd never thought to do this before, but actually that was really effective. I think you need to do that. And even my course, even with all that, you know, it's a tough course. And in the 4th year, I went to see Charlie Hunt, the principal, and said, oh, I'm not sure, I'm having doubts, I'm not sure if osteopathy is for me. And he said, wait, take a week out, go to an osteo's clinic, just see them work, see what they're doing, be inspired, and then come back and let me know. And a week later I was back going, oh, I love it. So I think, you know, academically it's a tough course. Financially it's a tough course. So you need people like you and me and whatever coming in saying, this is a great job. apply your principles. You'll be fine. There's someone at the end of the phone to support you. You do life-changing work and people appreciate it. You don't, there's so much great exercise stuff on the internet to spend half your time or more than half your time prescribing exercises when you could do hands-on treatment. You see patients who have had neck pain and cervicogenic headaches for years, but nobody's adjusted their cervical spine or dry needled their suboccipital muscles, and then all of a sudden they don't have it anymore. Or the dreaded maintenance where you help people function and align. They're driving desks all day long, they're sat around all day long. Like, it's great stuff. I'm not saving anyone's life, but I think what we do is important and valid.
Hello everyone, just a quick break to give you some information on where to best find me. The first place is the private Facebook group called the Successful Practitioner Pathway. I've set up this private group as a place where practitioners can go and get tips and advice on how to best accelerate their practice and improve their clinical practice skills. The second place to find me is at successinpractice.net. That is where the Success in Practice signature program is housed. You can find more information about me and how I can best help you achieve success in your practice. So, the two best places, the private Facebook group, the Successful Practitioner Pathway, and successinpractice.net. I will link to both those places in the show notes, so for more information, please see the show notes. Now, enjoy, and back to the show.
Well, this comes back to my point about the ordinary being extraordinary. The ordinary stuff, the 80-90% of your existence isn't, on the beach in Mexico sipping pina coladas. It's getting up in the morning, looking after your kids, going to work, paying the bills, having a good family, raising children, whatever it is that you do, building your business, doing all that stuff. That's all mundane, ordinary stuff. But that's where the magic happens, That's where the magic happens. And I guess, I don't know if we relay that onto students enough. So there should be more of that. And that needs to happen early. I had this conversation with on another episode about having the need to at least have a first year teacher with osteopaths. I get the whole evidence-based slant, and there needs to be more evidence-based osteopathy in the courses. It's a university course. There's people there who are academics. They have PhDs. I understand that, but you got 3 or 4 years of time to do that. In that first year, you need to really give leeway to somebody who can come in and say, this is what I'm doing in the clinic every day. These are the results I'm getting. This is how we can change people's lives. This is, I saw somebody the other day who, had some kind of pain related to their shoulder, and we sorted out the shoulder, and guess what? They're the chronic cough that they had disappeared, or something that we saw a patient with back pain, and they came back and they said, well, the back pain's a little bit better, but my incontinence is not there anymore. That's all amazing stuff. Sometimes we can't even explain it. No. But that's not osteopathy's fault. That's our fault. We're not there yet. But to hear that stuff, it's just inspiring. You got to get that stuff in the first year, in the first week, in the first month, in the first 6 months, the first year, because your second year is all you're going to be drowned in physiology and systems and pathophysiology and anatomy, and then the third year you've got all the neuro stuff and your orthopedic testing and neurology and understanding all that stuff, and then your fourth year you're in clinic and there's procedures and systems and case history and how to do all that, but you got to have all that stuff early on to inspire you, because the next few years are going to be really tough, and if you're not inspired by it, you're not going to stick with it, and you're not going to do well.
But I think that you need it. I think you need it all the way through, because I think people like you or me who've worked in and built practices know, or they understand the value of kindness, and I think though 4 years are tough, so you need someone to come in and say, it's okay. Like, I couldn't feel anything
yeah.
for 4 years, but you'll get it. It's fine. You know, like maybe
Yeah.
the academics that are in teaching are academic because their strengths are more academic and not people-based. And you need those people all the way through, I think.
Yeah, I'd love to have that all the way through, but we have to at least have it in the first year. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you know, you got to have it at least there in the first year. And I guess it's our shame that we've let that slip. I don't know what's going on. I mean, maybe it'll be a topic of discussion at the Osteopathy Australia conference. I'd love for that association to raise it as an association. I mean, we have APRA who protects the public against, or the public, they're protecting the public in the public interest. We have, obviously, accreditation councils who accredit courses and protect the universities. And we're supposed to have an association who are out there for the best interests of the members, of the actual professionals. And so if people are speaking out about this, then I guess the association needs to act, and when they talk to universities, they need to ask questions about why are we losing osteopathy in the osteopathy course? Can you please explain? Yeah. You know, can you give us some feedback? And that needs to be made public. You know, so I've said this before, and I guess I wanted to get your take on it. What do you have to say about that in terms of the association maybe speaking to universities? I mean, it's one thing you, Ali, picking up the phone and calling the course coordinator at Lismore at the university and saying, hey, look, what's going on? This is the problem that I'm seeing. But it's another thing when the president of Osteopathy Australia writes a letter and it's co-signed by the board members and the CEO, and the CEO picks up the phone and calls the university and says, hey, can we get together? Can we have a meeting, please? And let's discuss all this stuff. And let's hope I'm wrong and they're actually discussing all this stuff and they're doing it. We want to know about it. We want to know that, you know, look, we're not happy with the direction that things are going, and we're doing some things to try to counterbalance this. So at least when we go to look at renewing our membership year in, year out, we can go, well, someone's actually standing up for us, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
I
haven't renewed my membership this year. It was the first time.
Right.
Because when I had these issues with Lismore, I did raise them with Anthony. Right. And Anthony's been a sounding board for me often, but I felt that they
and sorry, just
no
for context,
powers. Yeah,
right. Just for context, Anthony Nicholas is the CEO. He's the CEO of Osteopathy Australia. That's who you're talking about, right? Okay, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So he's been a sounding board for me, but I think he basically said there's nothing that can be done. Basically,
right. Okay.
I think it's maybe it's a too big a thing. You know, I mean, if you get me on the subject of double blind trials and evidence based, you know, I could go off forever because, you know, maybe because there's no money in osteopathy, you know, it's not like a drug company or whatever. You know, we're going to save money. We're not making money for shareholders or whatever. But I just feel like, is there no value in people wanting to come and see us? You know, people getting better. You know, like I know it's hard to do evidence based because who you can't say, oh well, I just let's just HVTC 1-2 for everybody and see what that does because it's a philosophy that we're applying. Yeah. And every patient is different. So how do you make that evidence based? And therefore are we doomed as a professional?
Yeah, I get that. That's a very valid argument. It's been made before. And look, I understand what you're saying in terms of, you know, like, is it too big of an issue to be, you know, overcome? And I mean, even if it is, let's say it is. Let's say, Anthony's feedback is, well, you know, look, there's not much we can do. Okay, well, if there's not much we can do to influence the universities, then let's get together as a profession and see what we can do on the back end to make up for that. You know, can we set something up for new graduates that can come in and do a course, short 3-month, 6-month course that gives them a crash course in osteopathy. I mean, they know all the anatomy and physiology. They just don't know how to put it all together. And why don't we do something like this? I mean, we're not sitting down and having these discussions because no one wants to admit that there's a problem.
Yeah.
Right? That's the first thing. Nobody wants to publicly admit that there's a problem. And because if there's a problem, then the problem's happened under somebody's watch, and obviously that then needs to be accounted for. And I guess maybe people don't want to account for that. But I mean, that's another discussion. But if there's a problem, we need to identify there's a problem, and you can never solve anything unless you first say that there's a problem. And so once we admit that there's a problem, we can then sit down and work out a solution. We've got plenty of experienced people that could kind of come in and say, all right, well, you know, you're a new graduate. Here's a course that you can take that would, you know, get you up to speed. Another solution would be an internship model. You know, I've discussed this before. You know, universities, want to save money, right? Well, how about you bring the course down to 4 years, because there's a lot of crap in those courses that people don't use. Get them down to 4 years and put them into a year's internship at a clinic like yours, at a clinic like mine, at the 1,000 clinics that have been established in Melbourne and other parts of the country. You know, get them to do an internship and let them see what real osteopathy is about, so that when they graduate, they have that in them and they can practice it. You know, architects do it, engineers do it, psychiatrists and psychologists do it. They have internship models. I don't know why we can't do it. We obviously can't do it at the moment because we're not admitting that there's a problem. We're seeing these graduates come out and they're looking more like physiotherapists and exercise physiologists, and we're saying, great, they're registered osteopaths. They're osteopaths by registration only, right? Not by actual practice. And the ones that are osteopaths by practice are osteopaths by their own doing, not because the university taught them how to be osteopaths. Yeah. And so, I guess, does that about sum up how you feel, Ali?
Yeah, I think so. I think the reason I've sort of ranted with you is that I feel desperately sad that osteopathy appears to be coming to an end. Like, I do feel like it's more physio, and I think that that's fine if you want to be a physio. But if you've been treated by you or me and you want to be an osteopath and you go to uni, my daughter went to uni, that's not what you're getting. And so I feel like it's given me a great career, and it's given me lots of happiness and lots of flexibility, and I just feel sad that it doesn't seem to be available anymore. And I feel sad that people are having huge HECS debts and coming out and going in to work in hospital admin, or they're going to sell prosthetics or whatever, I don't know. Like, when I qualified, very few people didn't end up being osteopaths, and
well, because
I think it's a waste.
Because you help people. Yeah, you help people. You got results and you made money. Nobody leaves a profession where they're getting results and they're making money. It just doesn't happen. The sad thing for me, and I agree with that sentiment about being sad. The sad thing for me is not really about the universities. I mean, universities will do what's in their best interest, and if you think anything else than that, you're a bit naive, I think. I'm sad about us. I'm sad about us as a profession. We've let the ball. We've kind of dropped the ball on this thing, and we don't want to admit that there's a problem. You know, and so we need to do something about it. Universities aren't going to do anything about it. You know, I think we need to do more about this, and the more people like you that talk about it, Ali, I think the more awareness that gets put out there. I want to, I guess, maybe finish off on a better note. What are the next few years look like for you in terms of practicing as an osteopath, and then how would you like to see things go in osteopathy? Like, what would you like to see happen that would, I guess, positively affect the profession?
Big questions. I think I'm going to carry on practicing as I have in my small clinic. I think, the lessons that I've learnt about not employing people who aren't a good match have been good lessons. And I think that while there is no supply, I'll just carry on, as we are, which is fine. We're happy, we run a nice clinic. I've got 2 great associates, I couldn't want for more, so that's fine. Where do I see osteopathy? I tell you what I would like
Yeah.
to do, and I always wanted to be involved, you know, and I know it's not possible in the format, and I know it's not possible being in Canberra, but I did always want to be able to in some way give back. Like, I don't want to run a weekend course on HVT or whatever, but I did always want to be able to be in a kind, nurturing role with students to say, it's okay, and I understand, and, you know, it's bullshit that we all know what we're doing, you know, all the time, you know, and that you know, so I think, you know, I'm not really, you know, like I always did well academically, but I'm not really academic, I'm not really smart, but I think that, you know, kindness wise and growing the profession into, you know, real osteopathy, applying osteopathic principles and supporting people, I think, you know, I'd like to do some of that one day. You know,
Well,
I'm sure there
yeah.
are great practitioners out there, but I think they could be better.
I'm hoping that you get the opportunity. I think you know, it'll come up for you one day. I think the universe tends to reward people who I guess practice from the kindness of their own heart rather than any other motivation. And part of the motivation for me to have this podcast and to kind of speak to people like you is to raise awareness on these issues, right? Because I think for a long time we've stayed silent about it, you know, and we've seen the slow decay of what we're giving our students. And this is in no way a slight on them. It's not their fault.
No.
It's our fault. It's our fault, you know. And we need to do better. And so hopefully we can keep talking about it and somebody will listen. And I want to hear it from somebody publicly to say, look, you know, universities aren't going to change. Let's do something about it. And when that day comes around, I think we'll have to get some really smart people in the room, and we have lots of those. Mm-hmm. And let's find out how we can, I guess, you know, make osteopathy great again.
I know, we need some t-shirts printed up, but I'm very grateful for you raising the issues and, you know, opening up the discussion and, you know, letting us little moles come out of our holes to have an opinion or to have
I don't know
I feel like we're the only ones.
No, I don't know if I'm, I guess, everybody's favourite person, because I'm sure there's a lot of people. I mean, look, there's a lot of people who will probably be teaching at the universities now that might be listening to this and thinking, you know, why are you having a dig at us for? You know, I'm not having a dig at the teachers. I think that the teachers get hired based on what they can give, and if the universities are looking for teachers that can give, you know, a certain type of practice, I guess, or a certain type of education, then, you know, but we have people who can also give another type of education that's more realistic to private practice, and we'd just like to see them involved a little bit more. So it's not about, I'm not trying to attack people personally here, it's not about that. It's more about that we're seeing the outcomes, right? Like, the outcomes aren't great. You know, it's like if you go see an osteopath and you don't get the outcomes that you're after, you're not going back. And we're looking at the students that are coming out. The outcomes on those students aren't fantastic. And so either we change the person that those students are seeing, you know, or we stop going to that institution. And so there has to be another solution. All right, Ali. Well, it's I've had a great time chatting to you tonight. I really thank you for. Yeah, and I guess contrary to what you were thinking, I don't have to edit any expletives out tonight.
I know, I behaved myself, didn't I?
I know. I don't know why you thought you were going to just throw down F-bombs all night.
It's an English thing.
I mean, yeah, it would have probably made for some engaging viewing, but, you know, I was waiting for something and it just never came around. I'll have to get you a glass of wine on the next episode. Yeah,
much better than a glass of wine.
Yeah, loosen you up a little bit. All right. Yeah. Well, everybody, thank you for listening tonight. Thank you, Ali, for joining us. And I will catch everybody on the next episode. Ali, hang around with me. Okay. But to everybody else, have a good day or a good evening whenever you're watching this.